Public Works Committee meeting. We are calling the meeting to order. Item 2 is to review and consider a request from the Wood County Health Department to install sidewalk art along the trail adjacent from the farmer's market.
So this is a request from Hannah Wendell Scott with Wood County. She's unable to be here this evening, so I'll give you a little bit of background summary based off of the referral document that she put together. But their hope is to provide some artwork at no cost to the city, paid for via grant and any other funds that they would need to raise, that they would secure themselves. Adjacent to the farmer's market on the city-owned recreational trail along the river. The initiative aligns with the downtown master plan, emphasizes creative placemaking, improvements to the downtown riverfront experience. Those are all things that the community development director said that he's in favor of and supports. And so ultimately their request is to looking for approval to apply for a grant. It's kind of the chicken or the egg thing. Which one do they go to first? But they want to make sure the city's okay with it initially, possibly then contingent upon the grant award as well as artwork approval.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Was there any information given about the lifespan of this project, like after it would be installed? Is there going to be maintenance needed down the road or anything like that?
Well, initially here, no. I guess the last experience that we had was with the crosswalk at the library. That paint has faded some. Now, it was high quality material that was used, but it was on new asphalt material, new asphalt pavement, which might have something to do with it, and it's in a higher traffic sort of plowing environment. The recreational trail would see less traffic, less, plowing. It would not be on new asphalt material where you're applying paints on the fresh oils. So in theory, it should last longer, but inevitably the paint will eventually fade. And
So once it gets to a point where it does fade or, becomes unsightly potentially, who would be on the hook for removing that, or is it just something that would remain, or any thoughts behind that?
yeah, the ongoing maintenance, I guess it's something we could reach out to Hannah on and see if the farmer's market or collective group has any thoughts on continuing to put a group together to maintain it and keep it viable.
Sure. We would be plowing those surfaces, right? Or, yeah, okay. So it would see some plow activity. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not against this. I think it's appropriate for the area, and, I think it would be fitting with the parks and the farmer's market that we have there. It's just, I want to be sure that, down the road, if this thing ends up taking a beating, it doesn't become unsightly, and then the city is faced with trying to deal with it. So that's my only concern.
I agree. I think it would be a great addition to the downtown area and bring in a little more attention. I think there's opportunity to have more of this kind of public artwork, but again, I would like it to remain looking well. Go ahead, Paul.
So I did talk to Hannah about this. I know her personally. We coached soccer together. That trail is probably in the next 2 to 3 years needs to be resurfaced anyways, not as far as repaving, but just resealed. And so I guess that was my envisionment, Ryan, is that if, after the first year or the second year it becomes unsightly, we'd simply just seal it, brand new surface if they want to do it again, whatever type thing. So
I appreciate that. That puts my concern at ease then.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Tom. You know the drill.
Just a question. this is gonna be something that's just on the ground? I
Correct.
mean, like a painting or whatever?
Mhm.
Okay. Is it gonna be, it's gonna be off the trail itself, next to it, or?
On the trail. So they'll paint the
I mean, over the
asphalt
whole
fence
trail then, or?
a portion of it. Yep.
Do you have a couple community, and I'm not against it necessarily, it's just first I saw it. Is there a community or two in the area that, yeah, that has something like this to look at?
Yep. The pictures in the packet were from Pueblo, Colorado city government, and I actually took a little bit of time and looked that up. They have murals all over.
Okay, I didn't see Colorado there.
Yep.
Didn't
And
pay
then
attention to it.
we have by the library the crosswalk that was painted there as well.
Wearing down on it and whatnot, and I don't know how quick it would, but being on the trail itself where the, you know, the biking, walking, whatever is gonna take place over time, would that, you know, further along the wearing down of it, that's all.
Yeah, I think it gives us a good opportunity to track the wear on it as well, where we can use this as an example on a sidewalk or a walking trail, how long the high quality materials typically hold up with that specific use. So if we get this request in the future, we'll be able to adequately answer the question. All right. I'll make a motion to approve the Wood County Health Department to apply for a grant, which would allow them to install the sidewalk art.
I would second that.
All right, motion by Palmquist, second by Penscover. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it 3-0. Item 3 is to review the bid results for the Riverwall Rehabilitation Project and consider award to the lowest qualified contractor.
So we opened bids for this project on January 22nd. We had two prime contractors that submitted bids, Yankee General Contractors and Zenith Tech Incorporated. And the low bid was to Zenith Tech Incorporated with a bid amount of $1,206,100. And we've reviewed their bid documents. Everything seems to be in order. Reviewed the 2026 budget, which is set for about 1.5 million, which includes a contingency amount within that amount, just in case there was some construction change orders or things that needed to be handled. So there is a budget for it, and we would recommend approval to Zenith Tech.
Thank you, Joe. All right, I'm not a construction project manager, but I do appreciate a good comparison here. And in looking at both of the bids, just a curiosity question, the item 1, mobilization bonds and insurance, the Zenith Tech Inc. is less than half of what we have on the other one. I'm not exactly sure what that item covers and if we would have any additional liabilities, like if something goes wrong, would we not fully be covered by them?
So any additional insurance that they would need, any other additional liability insurance or bonds, certainly the contract that we have put together has all of our normal insurance and bonding requirements. So these would be things that, I mean, they could incorporate any additional costs carrying costs that they have, but they also might have additional supplemental things that they want to have for themselves. We're not privy necessarily to those additional riders or things that they put on specific for projects. We do review their normal stuff per contract. But otherwise, the The bulk of the pricing is largely just the mobilization. Typically with MOB costs, it's somewhat project dependent, but contractors that want to put in an early pay request, they'll put more money in the mobilization. Because as soon as they mobilize, they can do a pay application and, get payment coming in right away for their project. So, exactly what's included in there, I don't know. If Yankee has additional actual mobilization requirements, they have more equipment that they're putting together and hauling to the site, whereas Zenith Tech is maybe spreading more of those costs out on the other items. Sometimes they unbalance their items a little bit. They spread their costs out.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Not really.
No, I'll move to approve the Riverwall project to the low bidder Zenitech Inc. for the amount of $1,206,100.
I'd second that also.
Motion by Austin, second by Penscover. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have that one 3-0. Item 4, review and discuss the draft lead service line replacement ordinance.
Adam, you want to come up and speak?
So we discussed this back in December, I believe, at the Public Works meeting, gave the presentation on the financials and the ordinance itself. So what this is basically the federal government through legislation is requiring that by November 2027, there will be a 10-year replacement program to remove all lead services and any galvanized services that were impacted by lead. So in order to get any state funding, an ordinance needs to be in place prior to the June application date. We did an October intent to apply, and then the June will be the actual application. If the ordinance is not in place, we cannot get the Safe Drinking Water Act funding that would be available. It's not saying we would automatically get it, but we can't even apply for it without the ordinance in place. By November of 2027, it's not going to matter. It's going to be a federal requirement. So it's going to have to be in place by then. So we discussed what our options would be if it's using some of our PFAS litigation money, if it's getting the Safe Drinking Water funds, if it's applying for other grants through other resources. And the best approach was that due to PSC regulations, it would be optimal if the city could administer the funds, and then the ordinance would have to be in place, and then we would make the funds available through the PFAS and other sources. If the utility would actually administer it, then it falls under PSC regulations, and all the administration time has to be tracked because that then can't be applied to the rates. As for this ordinance, it's really describing that you have to replace within a 10-year period all lead services, galvanized services that are impacted by lead. There is a compliance section in there that is going to talk about fines if they don't do it. The goal is to start out with CIP projects. So we'd start out with our CIP projects and we'd isolate which ones are lead and galvanized. And as we go through that, we'd intend to use PFAS money at that point to do the private funding for those. Not only that, I believe when Paul's crew is out there doing the work, it can be a huge cost saving for the homeowner if the street department would be able to do the service as long as they're doing the public service. Now, I don't know if you agree with that, but that is an option. Rather than bringing in a third party, and I think then you're going to see the cost escalates, and then the funding is not going to be able to go as far. I mean, do you guys have any questions with the draft in front of you?
I got a couple. You'd mentioned the city would need to administer any funds that we would receive. That'd be the best way and the cleanest way to do it. Mayor's here. I don't know if we've had any discussions with staff related to that at all at this point.
We have not had a discussion yet.
Okay. Well, so knowing that now, I think it would be important to make sure that we have everybody on board before we approve an ordinance, and that would be a pretty important part in my mind. That's, I mean, in my mind, this ordinance, a lot of the reason for doing it is to try to create some funds for residents that are going to have to replace their service lines. That's, you know, that's a lot of my passion towards this. So I understand 2027 comes, you know, it's likely going to be a federal requirement. So outside of that, say this ordinance does get approved, I assume that you would be trying to implement this program by the next construction year. Would that be accurate?
Ideally, we'd try to do it in the 2026 CIP if it can get through that quickly.
Okay.
I doubt that by the time we start 16th Street.
My concern would be giving residents that have, you know, galvanized or lead lines the appropriate amount of time to prepare for that.
Yep,
Y-
and
you know,
that's actually in the ordinance.
I see that, and I'm not sure if that's enough time in my mind. I think we know a year in advance typically when these projects are going to happen. I mean, to me, I think I saw, what, 45 days? Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
In my mind, that's not a large enough window for some folks to wrap their minds around the project like that and to make strides to not only go to the city to get the funding, but then to line up a contractor. I mean, that's all going to have to be done basically, you know, by the resident. So that time frame worries me.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's something that we should look at adding some additional time there. You know, I don't know if it's 90 days or, like I said, I mean, we know about these projects typically a year in advance. So those are my concerns right now.
I think the last time you had come in and talked to us, you had stated something to the effect that we have a good idea of where the lead or galvanized are currently.
Yeah, so out of all the services being replaced in 2026, there's 3 lead services, there's 1 galvanized services, and there's 6 customers that have refused to answer the voicemails. So we'll probably start door knocking on those 6 customers.
Okay.
But otherwise, the entire service inventory for 2026 has been documented.
So if we had all of our city departments who would administer a program in approving of it, we could implement the ordinance next month and then potentially send letters to those people that we know.
And-
Even though we would be required to give them, let's say, 45 or 60-day notice, we would go out of our way to give them more.
Yes.
Is there
One-
any services on 16th Street?
There's 1 unknown that's not responded and 1 that is a galvanized.
Any other questions?
I've got nothing.
I don't know if there's anything you can say to, or advise to put my concerns at ease here, but, you know, trying to push through these projects, especially this year, it's worrisome for me. I mean, the last line of let me go through this here. So the portion of the ordinance that relates to customer replacements done in conjunction with utility replacements. If somebody doesn't follow through with what they need to do and we come through and replace the utilities and the service line isn't addressed, the customer side lead service line as required by this section may result in issuance of non-compliance penalties and or implementation of other relief. Can you expand on that at all, what that looks like?
So that, every section of this ordinance, including that section, is taken from another municipality's ordinance. So that 45-day that we talked about before, that's coming from another one. I've talked with Joe this morning about section 5, section 6, the entire section 6 comes from Kenosha's. the compliance that's coming from Marshfield, which passed theirs last year. So we have to put the compliance part in there. Otherwise, there's no way that we're going to be able to get them to comply. Now, be aware that that's based on the utility schedule. So we can push the compliance fines and fees off to a later time. You know, the goal is to get everything done by 2037.
Okay, and that helps. I just want to make sure that, you know, the street crews come through, they do the work, and we're trying to push those property owners to get it done, and for some reason, they're unable to. The last thing I want to see are those residents, you know, having their line condemned or something, but, you know,
So, yeah, what'll happen is they'll end up having to do a third party after the fact.
yeah.
So it's going to be more cost savings for them to do it this year when it's done, probably thousands of dollars of cost savings versus if they do a third party 7 years from now.
So I think it would be very important for those residents to be made aware of that specifically as well. And then depending on, you know, the types of grants or funding we can get to help our residents with these projects, because honestly, some of these projects are going to happen outside of road construction because those roads are newer and it doesn't get done before 2037. So there's going to be probably a lot of them, I would guess, that are going to be worked on outside of our road construction. So I think it's important to capitalize on our road construction where we can, but I don't want to see our residents being, you know, having their service terminated prior to, say, like the 2037 date where, you know, we are locked in. If anybody goes beyond that, then the city or the WWLC is getting fined. At that point, I think, you know, that's when, you know, we have to just say, you got to replace it or your service is terminated. But that helps. Timeline-wise, we want to get this approved by June, so we have a little bit of time here. I think I'd really like to hear an answer from staff about administration of the funds and what that looks like, so we can wrap our minds around it, you know, prior to approving this ordinance, unless anybody else has.
I know there's some efforts looking for financing right now. There's no answers yet, but they applied for a grant, so we don't have that answer. The way it's been explained to me, I think, is you need the ordinance before you can start going for the money. You know, in simplistic terms. That's basically all this is. So I'd agree with you if we got time, you know, give it some time, see what happens.
I would anticipate what you know, what department would handle this, I guess, would be my first question. Would we,
I think between WWLC, finance, legal, and myself, we'll start the conversation right away and kind of move forward. Like Jeff was saying, I think for the most part, this was the ordinance that we were talking about now, but I get your point in saying let's hammer out these details. And again, it's not going to be an easy answer. We have
Yep.
some ideas on the table to try to cut the costs as much as possible because, again, we're looking at a really big project, and, you know, most private companies, usually when they're doing it, it's kind of a one-off, and that's a tough one for these companies to do because it's a really big project and they have all their other business to do. So it's going to take some talking. I guess in the end, the ordinance says we need to make it a priority like we're doing this now, and got to figure out how we're doing it and what the costs are and how they're getting paid.
okay. So I hate to say it, but, you know, maybe another month, let you guys, is that enough time to work
Adam?
it out?
Does that put us in any kind of situation from your perspective, or we got a month to kind of talk with more people at the different departments about this?
So let me get this straight. So it'll go till Public Works in March. Is it then going to have to go to legislation in March as well, prior to going to council?
No, because Public Works has control of ordinances that are within Public Works realm. So it will go from Public Works if we approve or don't approve to council.
Okay. Then there would be enough time, so I think we can touch base on this in March again.
Again, I think the funding, helping residents with the funding is one of the most important, if not the most important part of this ordinance in my mind. So I want to make sure the city understands their part, WWLC knows their part, and, you know, we have a good plan on what that looks like. And right now, we don't. So
just to understand, from my understanding is, we don't know yet if there's any help. But at the same time, it's a program that's being forced to, kind of, I don't know, is that the right word? Forced?
Yeah, it's coming from federal legislation, so the only way to overturn it is get legislation in Washington changed, so.
Right.
Right, and I
So-
get that, but,
but
you know,
yeah.
who's going to go after the funding? You know, who's
Right.
gonna go after those grants? What department's handling it? None of those questions are answered right now. Right?
Well, do you have answers to the grants in that? I'm assuming the way you're talking, those are things that you guys have the track on to reach out for those grants?
Yeah, we've already applied for another grant resource outside of the Safe Drinking Water Act, and we'll be applying for the Safe Drinking Water Act in June for 2027.
Are there other grants that relate to this? I know the state is very,
No, Now, we
wishy.
do already have funding if we use the PFAS money
right.
for that.
But that's
Okay.
only a certain amount, right? That's only
That's a
going to go
certain
so
amount,
far.
so that would probably be the point where that's dedicated to the CIPs, because there's not going to be a high volume of those.
Okay, so that clears up a little bit. So you guys are already going after some of this grant funding, and we have some PFAS money out there.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
But the administration of those funds would have to be handled through the city. So basically, the city would be dealing with giving the residents those monies to assist with those specific projects.
That's correct.
So that's the part that I think we need to understand what it looks like with the city before we just move forward with this ordinance. And if it's not a showstopper, Mayor, if you think it's something that we can work through, then, I mean, I'll take your word for it, and I think we could move to approve this, but until we
Yeah,
have
I
those
think,
answered.
again, I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. We have this money, we'll have to make some decisions as to who's all going to get it, how far it's spread out, if it's all going to go to these projects. But again, it's a smaller amount of money considering the bigness of the project. So then we have to talk about, well, what's going to be the most cost effective? I don't necessarily want to go into, possibilities right now. There's certainly things that we've talked about, and I have in my thoughts about maybe what we can do, but again, it's going to come down to how much we can help, or how much is the resident going to be kind of mandated to pay in order to make this happen. It is going to be tricky, no matter which way we look at it. But
So-
again, it's a federally mandated program. It's not something that we're in control of.
So on the city side of things, would you be comfortable with Public Works approving this ordinance right now as is?
I don't see anything outside of the ordinance. The ordinance is it, and again, we're gonna start talking about the financing and everything that we can do to help make this a better program, but it doesn't necessarily affect the ordinance that's in front of you now.
Okay.
I initially did not have any problems with the way the ordinance was written, but I wrote down a few things with the notification time, letters to residents, potentially no fines until absolutely necessary, and making a few things clear, because I think we understand what this ordinance is, and we can say, yeah, of course, we're not going to fine you until 2027 when you're mandated to. But if I were a resident and not listening to these conversations, I would read this and think, if I'm in the June timeframe and you're coming to replace my road and I don't do my pipes, I'd be terrified that if I don't do it, I'm going to get fined, and we don't know how the funding's going to play out. So I think I personally would like to add a few nuances to this, or revise it slightly to make it clear.
And just so you know, the language that was done for the ordinance, which was written by Horace Witten, the EPA's consultant, some of that language is tied to the lead and copper rule improvements. So just be aware that if we change some of the language, it could then not comply with some of the regulations of that improvement.
Okay.
Madam Chair, are those changes something that you think we could discuss at council?
Sure.
And then maybe WWLC comes back for council this month and talks through it with everyone, because ultimately it's the choice of council to approve this ordinance. So I think it's pretty important that they all understand this as well.
Okay.
So I think those conversations would be valuable to have in front of everyone.
And I will make note and then follow up with you.
Yep.
To make sure that,
Everything falls within the federal
Right.
guidelines, yes.
and then be prepared for council.
I think we can have more answers to, or at least have the conversation as to what exactly the finances are at now and what attempts we're going to make as we're moving forward.
And I just wanted to add something too. This came up maybe a couple months ago. We looked into the potential for in cooperation with the CIP projects for the city crew to continue on with the service replacement outside of the right-of-way up to the house. And I'm not sure if there's a different legal interpretation of this or not, but the 2017 Wisconsin Act 137 says the act creates an exception for work ancillary to replacing a utility side water service line containing lead that is performed with the consent of a private property owner and that does not involve replacing the customer side water service line. So at least the way I read it, it doesn't look like the local municipality would be able to pursue replacing both the utility side and the private side, but there's nuances in the language that I'm not 100% sure of. So something that I think having a legal interpretation on would hopefully clear that up. But at least that's kind of where it stands on that front, having city crews do that additional private side work. But
That may fall onto the physically replacing it, but that wouldn't stop us from digging it to the house to have a licensed, whatever that's saying, if it's a licensed plumber or whatever, or a licensed utility company do that work where they physically hook onto the curb stop and run it into the house. So there could be would you say hybrid version of it, instead of having to have a contractor come in and dig it to the curb stop, we're there with the excavator, dig it quick, and a licensed plumber puts it in.
Joe, do you think by council we could have a legal interpretation of that?
yeah, we can try.
All right, thank you.
Let's push her off to council.
Do we need to take any action on this then?
No, if we don't need to take action on it because it hit an agenda, we can call it out at council. So we'll likely do that. We will be doing that for the discussion at council. Anything else? Great. Item 5, discuss the East
Thanks, Adam.
Jackson Street project and review the preliminary road layout.
Thank you. I did share a updated document prior to the meeting here. Let me just get my notes up. So currently we're pursuing the what council voted on previously with roundabout at 2nd Street in East Jackson and then an all-way stop at 3rd and East Jackson intersections. Currently working through the horizontal layout throughout the corridor. That's basically what you see before you today. There's likely going to be some slight modifications to things, but the intersections are starting to take shape, and like the circles, the roundabouts positioned very closely to where we need it to be positioned for the geometrics to work. For the first segment of the project from the bridge to Saratoga, single lanes in each direction. We've got physical medians dividing that traffic throughout the corridors, including up 2nd Street. We are attempting to position some on-street parking along 2nd Street. Again, some of that might change its shape to some degree here yet, but those are some things that we're looking at. Additionally, moving onto the south section of the project, south of Saratoga. Again, continuing on with a 2-lane roadway, adding turn lanes where appropriate and where we can, and then largely just using either painted medians or just a painted center line to divide the traffic. So the next step is going to be working on our vertical design for the roadway, positioning catch basins and taking care of the drainage design for the project. We have also kind of split out the water main and sanitary sewer permitting aspect of the project, just to try to have the roadway design kind of ongoing and fast track the utility permitting to the state. Water main permit approvals are 2 to 3 months out, so we're trying to get those out this week here yet, if possible. Otherwise, first part of next week, get those to the state so they can start their review process and identifying things, just because it takes time. We get in the queue, and just depends on how long that queue is. But we're continuing to coordinate efforts with Wood County on the vacation of Market Street, and then I'd say over the next 4 weeks, maybe upwards of 8 weeks, we're going to have a plan set in hand that is going to have all the utilities and things and make a lot of progress here in a short time.
Thank you, Joe. Any comments? Questions? Go ahead, Mayor Zacher.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate the fact that you're giving me an opportunity to talk about this. This was something that I assumed last month, and I know last month went pretty quick for me. My assumption was that there would be a roundabout on this project at 2nd Street and then also at 3rd Street, which would then lead into that parking lot. I guess I just want to humbly ask you to think about it one more time, to say, like, that's all going to be a new development down there, and then it's going to open the door for a lot more new development as we go through the next couple of years. It does change the landscape, and I feel like the roundabouts, as far as I see when I'm going through them in the community, I know there's some fear around them and some feelings, like, dislike, but it seems to me like where they're put in, most people have figured it out and it works really well, and everything, everybody travels smoothly, safely, relatively slow for that matter. I just feel like if we don't put one in at 3rd Street, we're going to have this smooth traffic flow, and then right after that, people are going to be coming to a grinding halt right at 3rd Street, trying to get into that parking lot when, for the most part, it could be a nice, smooth traffic pattern. That sounds to me like, in the questions I've asked, the cost differential, it's not adding a cost difference to it in terms of the 4-way stop versus the roundabout to any significant degree. It's not a major area that's trying to buy new land or anything like that. It's working into an existing construction area. So again, I appreciate the fact that you're letting me speak after the fact, and I respect your thoughts and your decisions. I'm just throwing it out there because it would be something that I would always regret if I didn't at least try. So thank you.
Second thoughts?
I'd be interested to hear what Mr. Eichstead has to say about that suggestion.
So as the mayor mentioned about the additional costs, typically the entire right-of-way at that location is going to be hardscaped anyway. So kind of rearranging the pavement pieces isn't going to, generate any more hardscaping. Would be more expensive. I know from the analysis that we had done, looking at the level of service of the traffic at that intersection, the operations were they were both the same level of service, you know, either between a roundabout or the always stop. There was a little bit less delay with a roundabout, you know, so that accounts for the having to stop and then go at the always stop type of intersection. I know we had previously considered a two-way stop at that location, but that wasn't a viable option because of the visibility. And so it really kind of comes down to a coin toss in the end on, you know, just what's the general perception or sense of how that intersection might work. Because on the numbers, either intersection, an all-way stop or roundabout would both work. Yeah.
Do you remember if we had the same level of traffic at both intersections?
At Second and at Third?
Correct.
No, the traffic so we did account for both a future projection, like a 20-year projection on traffic, and then we also shifted the traffic volumes based upon losing Market Street and converting that into a parking lot. So we projected out what the parking lot traffic demand would be and applied that to the Third and Jackson Street intersection. And then the ancillary traffic that would have been going north and south on Market Street, we shifted them over to Second Street and accounted for them there.
Okay.
So no cost difference. It might save some time if it were switched to a roundabout for traffic. I mean, I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but do you have a stance on this? Which way would you recommend, Joe?
Trying to remember exactly how I phrased it when we brought it up at the previous committee meeting. I think it's more so either functions, and either would function well. They both have the same level of service. It's just that slight delay. So any of the operational aspects of it would largely fall on kind of what the public perception of having a third roundabout in a small space, the general look and feel of it, you know, some of the more subjective things. Objectively, it's going to work either way, and both would work well. It's more on the subjective side.
How about you, Paul?
I really don't have a preference either, but I think like Joe said, they'll both do what they're supposed to. The amount of traffic that is going to be delayed is going to be twice a day, right? It's going to be when Wood County staff is going to work and when they're leaving at the end of the day.
Good
That's
point.
to me, the amount of traffic that's down there. Those other times are minor, not minor, but just not going to matter. I mean, obviously, my preference to the mayor's point for the flow of traffic, the two-way would be the best option, but it's not viable because of the blind spot looking back up the hill. You know, so if you want the traffic flow, the roundabout is probably the better option. But again, I don't think that that's going to matter much except for 2 times throughout the day, personally.
What about winter maintenance? Having these three so close together and our city crews plowing them.
There really isn't an issue with it because for the most part, you get into the roundabout and you do the roundabout complete the very first time that you do it. And then you're coming back through it. In looking at this plan, it's going to be, I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around what it's going to be, trying to understand where it's going to be green space versus hardscaping right now. So I think some things are going to change in that aspect as well, you know, because it'll be very similar to West Jackson Street where we don't pull out all the snow that we currently do because the sidewalk is not going to be directly on the backside of the curb. There are some spots, you know, I've shared my concerns with Joe about Second Street between the roundabouts where there's on-street parking there. We're gonna have to pull out snow in that area because you're gonna get out of your car and not wanna go through a snowbank to get to the sidewalk. So I've shared some concerns about the medians and things like that in those locations, but otherwise, for the most part, I think that we're simply going to be able to wing the snow back off of the curb to, in those green spaces, similar to what we do over here on on West Jackson here right now. But, yeah, it's very similar to West Grand, or East Grand Avenue, I'm sorry. You know, that whole thing changed when that was redone, what was that, back in 15, 16, or no, 2020? Because we put the green space in there, so we now have a boulevard to put snow where we didn't have it before, so. But as far as roundabouts go, you know, it's been on Second Avenue since the early 2000s. These are a little bit smaller than what those are, but you get into them, you clean them out right away, and then you can just come and go very easily, so.
I would say this intersection that we're speaking to probably affects, you know, the county building the most. Have we gotten any feedback from them on this design?
I haven't heard any specifics related to the intersection design. Obviously, having the driveway entrance as one leg of the intersection it was a primary component of it for safety and ease of navigating the intersection. Both the all-way stop and the and a roundabout option would both facilitate having their driveway be a fourth leg to the intersection.
Outside of a fourth leg, no inclination of four-way stop or roundabout preference, though? Okay.
No.
And right now, it's essentially just subjective whether we want 3 or 2, because everything else is the same.
Pretty much, yep.
Big fan of subjective.
I think you want to speak. You want to get up there?
Thank you.
Thank you. Just, I guess, to catch up on what's going on here, or proposed here. Start with, what becomes of, or when does it become First Street that gets vacated? Am I understanding this picture right?
Yeah, so
And what would be,
the future of First Street, I guess, is still in question, other than the traffic that First Street currently carries will get shifted over onto Second Street.
Yeah.
And then, you know, what comes of First Street, if the pavement stays, or if that right-of-way is also vacated at some point in the future, and incorporated as part of a bigger development parcel, those are possibilities, but no decisions have been formalized with that.
well, for what's being done, there's no, I mean, there's nothing, no conceivable way that First Street's gonna be put back into operation down the road, is there?
As a street,
As a street?
probably not, not carrying traffic anyway. I mean, I guess there's other uses, you know, that were talked about that, you know, leaving the pavement in there, having a way for vehicles to get in and out for special event sort of things. That was a discussion point, but yeah, getting the day-to-day traffic away from the bridge, away from the pedestrian crossing, the trail crossing there, into better operations navigating the turns at, coming down Baker Street, at First Street and Market, at that roundabout, and then also the heavy turning movements right at the bridge.
The roundabout proposed there on Second in Jackson, how is that compared to the size of the one that's on Baker and First Street and that up there?
It's a little bit smaller, not significantly smaller though, but it is a little smaller.
I don't know how many, and maybe wouldn't be a concern, but, and there may be more trucks traveling on the street than are supposed to be, but, there are a lot of heavy-duty trucks that come down First Street. Is that gonna be big enough to handle? They're not just semi-trucks, I mean, you got cement trucks and everything coming down there. I do see it quite often as I am up in that area, somewhat regularly. And there are trucks that use that, I think anyway, some do to bypass the staying on the highway, the expressway. That's a way to get through downtown. So it's just a concern that I look at, is that big enough to accommodate those trucks? To use it and to, to get onto Jackson Street and go across the river. And the other thing, and I'll just, I think that's all, is the parking proposed on Second Street and how that would have the snow be pulled out and whatnot there. Other than adding extra parking for, I'm not quite sure what, if it'd be special events or what, or is that for people? Is that for people then to use to get to the courthouse itself? The question I have with that is there the need to have parking on that street? That's all. I'm just here to, I guess, ask some questions like I did here and just see if you may have. My thoughts may not be what I'm thinking, but that's why I ask them, so thank you.
Thank you.
One last question for me. So Market Street, is that gonna have access to the roundabout on First and Baker? That parking area, or is it gonna be strictly out to Jackson?
Strictly out to Jackson,
Okay.
just one driveway entrance in and out.
Okay, so like Paul said, a couple times a day, that could get fairly backed up if we have a four-way stop there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be certain time periods where there'll be a rush. All the analysis is done at peak times, peak vehicle demands. So even with that, they both types of intersections still operate at a level of service A.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, could you have a queue of maybe 3 cars or some sort of queue of traffic? Sure, but they're generally continuing to move.
Okay.
Well, I kinda like to go drive through it and just lay eyes on it myself before we make any kind of a decision. Maps are maps, but once you look at it and you see exactly what's sitting right in front of you, I think it'll become a whole lot clearer than just anything we're talking about tonight. We can maybe put it off until the next meeting or something like that.
Were you looking for approval on this tonight, Joe, or just a discussion?
Well, initially, the item was just a general update, but I guess in light of potentially considering a change to the intersection, time would be of the essence for any changes, just because we are proposing to do this project this spring and summer, And so any changes to the intersection design would, the sooner we could have them, the better, just so we could continue moving forward with the design.
Do you think that council?
We could talk it over at council. I was gonna ask if a month would affect it in a tough kind of way for you, or we could bring it up at council too and discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's an indication tonight, to discuss it at council, then, you know, I'll make sure we, you know, kind of pause efforts with that. And, we do have a consultant that's assisting with the roundabout aspects of it. So, I'll make sure that they're aware of that and, you know, just kind of put the brakes on until council.
That's 2 weeks. Shouldn't mess things up too bad.
I'll just say, based on discussion and the possibility for some potential efficiencies by switching to a roundabout, I think if we had a consensus at council that this was a direction that we wanted to go, I would vote in favor to make it a roundabout intersection as well.
That would be what I'd be kind of leaning for, but I don't know, I kind of come from the measure twice and cut once type scenario. I'd like to look at it and just drive around and talk to some people, see what they think.
And we'll take no action and prepare to talk about it in 2 weeks. Thank you. Item 6, review the engineering and street monthly activity report. Let's go streets, Paul.
I apologize. I was out sick on Thursday and part of Friday, so didn't make the packet, but it was handed out and it was also emailed to you prior to the meeting. Month of January, again, garbage and recycling. For the month of January, maybe it was just because it was cold for 2 weeks, we actually came in less than what the 2025 year was for both garbage and recycling. There's been the only activity on the construction projects has been reviewing the plan sets that we have to order materials for these upcoming spring projects. Again, then Kafka Construction is who the city contracts with to grind the brush. So both of our sites, the piles have been ground and they are now hauling that out to whoever they take it to. We have had multiple snow and ice events in the month of January. They're just for everybody's knowledge or just communication for you. You know, there has been some grumblings about like some of the quality of the highways and things like that during the events that we had here in the last month. And, you know, our salt, once the temperatures drop below 15 degrees, you know, salt tends not to work as well. So it is winter and they're not going to be dry, wet pavement all the time. But for the most part, they were relatively decent. It does make for challenging times when you get rain in January and switches from 35 degrees to minus 15 degrees the next day type thing. So it's not anything that we do intentionally by any means. We have gotten some sidewalk complaints here in the month of January from code enforcement to take care of. During the colder temperatures, time was spent on reviewing and preparing equipment and tools and things like that for our next construction season, as well as doing some work with it for the buildings in City Hall here, and then also helping out at the library. Our sign shop, again, uses these winter months to replace stop signs and yield signs that don't meet the MUTCD requirements. I believe that they said that we have over 120 stop signs and yield signs to be replaced this year. We're able to remove the 2-hour parking in the downtown area that was approved at the December council meeting, as well as took the map that was approved for the ATV and UTV portions that were opened and staked out the locations for the required signs, and called in Digger's Hotline for those. Our shop, again, continues to maintain our fleet when needed with general maintenance. We have had some breakdowns of different pieces of equipment, from sidewalk tractors to a 16-year-old plow frame that broke in half during one of the events that was replaced. Changing hydraulic cylinders in trucks, to replacing oil coolers in squad cars that broke. I do want to acknowledge in the month of February here, one of our 29-year employees actually left there the second week of January, and after 29 years is going to be, or retiring here the end of next week. And then there's other retirements that are happening here in the month of February that we'll recognize at the next meetings. So I would like to thank Mark McCauley for his leadership and dedication to the city of Wisconsin Rapids for the last 29 years. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
I'd like to congratulate Mark. I've known him for quite a while. He's done a good job for the city. We used to try to sell him some stuff through the years when I was a salesman, and he's watching the city's dollars. I mean, he's a shrewd negotiator. He's done a very good job for the city through the years.
And being employed by one organization for 29 years speaks a lot about our organization as well. So thank you for your leadership and coordinating the teams, and I appreciate everything Mark has done since April 21st of 1997. And I hope he enjoys his retirement. All right, moving on to the monthly engineering report.
Thank you. So the permit and degradation fee information is included. We did finish the traffic study on 13th Street north of Baker Street. That's included in the report. A brief summary of the findings. So we looked at 3 intersections along 13th Street north at Irving Street, Wiley Street, and Franklin Street. And at each of those, we checked the visibility, checked the traffic, the 85th percentile speed. Traffic was around 184 vehicles per day on Washington Street. We looked at one intersection. I should clarify that one intersection for speed and volumes. Just knowing that most of the traffic through there, the majority would be running north and south or crossing through that intersection. The 85th percentile speed was 26 miles per hour. There were a few right angle accidents. The 2 at Wiley had snow and ice that may have contributed to those accidents. The other 2 were dry pavement. One in particular, they noted that they slowed down and looked but never saw the other vehicle coming. And so these crashes were from 2020 to present. There's a typo on the document here. But otherwise, the visibility is good, and based on the city's policy, there wouldn't be any necessity to upgrade the control beyond uncontrolled intersections, at least not at this time. So that's the traffic study there. I guess additionally, the plans for the flashing yellow arrow signal modifications at 2 of the intersections along the expressway and Plover Road. We're expecting 60% plans to be ready in March. We've got 3 of our projects either out for bid or bid completion. That would be the Riverwall Rehab project that we already covered here this evening. Otherwise, the crushing contract and the Interceptor sewer lining contract is currently out for bid. The asphalt and concrete contracts will be coming out or going out for bid advertising here later this month. Still kind of in a holding pattern on the 8th Street project as the DOT reviews the real estate and other design impacts with the roundabout at Griffith Avenue with their management team before kind of advancing that project forward. I guess other items, we're continuing to make progress on the sidewalk mapping effort for future sidewalk policy. The base map and data gathering is nearly complete, and we now started to look at the analysis of the data. I guess we'll see where things are with that, how far we get before construction starts. Additionally, we did have a meeting with Safe Step. They're the sidewalk cutting contractor that the city's been utilizing since 2017. They usually provide us with an annual report, and there's a couple highlights from there. So we use sidewalk cutting in lieu of panel removal and replacement, primarily to remove trip hazards. And from 2017 through 2025, the city repaired an extra 1,887 unsafe sidewalk panels that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do with the funds available. And in 2025 alone, the use of the saw cutting joints that were repaired an additional 442 panels just in 2025 at a cost of about $45,000 versus the equivalent removal and replacement costs of over $200,000. So it is of value to the city, something that the city did include in their budget for 2026 as well. So we're going to continue on with that contractor, but it is nice to see an annual summary and validate that that program's still viable. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that I did bring our construction plans that we have put together for 2026. They're being produced by the engineering department. The design and plan development is a primary part of what the engineering department does, and in 2026 represents $11.6 million in construction, designed nearly entirely by city staff. And so I wanted to publicly acknowledge their efforts and to share it with the committee and make that available. After the meeting, if anybody wants to look at them or talk about them, they are also available on the website. We update them regularly for coordination efforts and then just for public consumption if they desire. So, thank you.
Thank you. Comments? Questions?
Just one for me, go back to the 8th Street reconstruction, the Griffith roundabout. That roundabout would have to be approved by the city as well for that to move forward, is that correct?
Yes, it's still in a evaluation stage, I guess, is fact finding. So the DOT has kind of put together, they've moved forward on evaluating a traditional upgrade or an upgrade to the traditional four-legged signalized intersection and applied a cost estimate to that build, and then also put together two different roundabout designs, basically just the same roundabout design, just positioned differently. And they applied a construction cost estimate to that. I think it was an additional $800,000 for the roundabout. It does have varying real estate impacts depending on which direction it would go in. And that information kind of got us to well, let's pause here and see what the next steps are. And the next step is trying to evaluate what the real estate cost is. That's not included in the $800,000 additional cost, which would be borne by non-state government, so the county or and/or the city, likely sharing in that additional cost. And so initially, the DOT said, hey, city, go to your real estate consultant, see what they say about doing a real estate study. And we did that and brought it back to the state, and they've kind of been trying to figure out what the next steps are.
Yeah, I think you made it perfectly clear previously, Joe, that, you know, if we did go to a roundabout there would be some cost put onto the city as well. So I just want to make sure that's not something that, I want to make sure that's something the city has control over. So that's all. Thank you.
Most definitely.
Hearing nothing else, we'll go to the referral list. I think that the items that are completed, like item 6, 8, 11, 12, we can just remove them. Any other changes, additions?
I've got none.
Great. Our next meeting date is March 5th at 5 p.m. unless there are objections from the committee. All right, meeting adjourned at 6:11 p.m. Thank you, everyone.